Hey everybody, it's Miss Wilkinson. I hope you guys have had a good week. I have a lot of information for you all. This will be due, I'm not sure. I'll let you know in the last video. All right. So what we're going to do is I've seen all of your discussions and really like what you all have responded to about what is art. And all of you are right. There's no right or wrong answer. But art is a reflection of our culture. So break up this PowerPoint. Slideshow from the beginning. What is art? Art is a reflection of one's culture. So what does that exactly mean? I like gardening, and I'm really interested in things that are very modern or things that are shabby chic. Those are things in my environment, and that's the kind of artwork I create. If someone sees something violent or they're exposed to lots of video games and things like that, that's the kind of thing we're going to see in our society. At the beginning of time, there was the cavemen at the very beginning of time. So we have the first recorded pieces of art found in Lascaux, France, and Altamira. And this is called the Hall of Bulls. Well, what did cavemen do all the time? They were out hunting for food so that they could live. So that's what they did. They drew paintings on the wall using different pigments from breaking up different stones and different materials to get this pigmentation with their saliva and creating what they do every day. They were making a historical blueprint for us to see. They necessarily were not leaving this for us to see, but it was just their daily activity, their life, and that's what they knew. They didn't know about telephones. They didn't know about all these other things. They were just drawing what they knew. Keith Haring. Keith Haring was a gay man in New York City, and during his time, there was a huge crack epidemic, and that's when I was growing up, probably in like the 80s, early 90s. And so he did all of these different figures that didn't look like men or women. They were just unisex. And I'm going to back out of here for a second and show you all some Keith Haring images. He had a really cool shop called the Pop Shop, and that was in the Lower East Side in New York City. It was one of the first places I visited when I moved to New York City, and they closed it down because the rent was so high. But you guys may realize that this is a famous artist, but he did these designs that are now seen on book bags and shoes, and I've seen several students wear them and have no clue where they came from. But you can see like this image here of the two people holding the heart, and well, what happened here? You can't see their gender. He was famous for creating also this baby that went around. Here's a little baby image. You can't tell if it's a male or a female. It's just that there's love coexist and it's together. So he was really into these billboard designs, and they became really famous and popular. And he started doing them in the subways, and then became like a fashion. He died of AIDS, I believe. All right, back to our PowerPoint. Oh, here we go. Here's another image. Oh, nope. Go back. Sorry for the technical difficulties, guys. This is the example of the AIDS epidemic. There's two people there. You can't tell if they're men or they're women, but they're both in love. And because of this, they are sharing something together that is intimate, but it's still in the end, it still's love. So what is art? Everybody pick up a pen. Pick up a pen or pencil that has writing on it. Okay? You have time to do that? So everybody put it in your right hand. Most people are right-handed. So look at what your pen says. Mine says, rayon acrylic painter, marks on anything water-based. Well, I happen to be left-handed. So if I put it in my left hand, it's upside down. I can read it upside down, but I can't read it the way it's supposed to be read. So what does that tell us? It tells us that every artist leaves their fingerprint somewhere, whether they're knowing or not, on their designs. So the person who had the first patent on the pen and pencil was a right-handed person. So you always see like the number 2 pencil and all of the writing going up. That was from the right-handed person who designed this. So there's something called form versus function. If we look at a chair, you can have a chair and the function of the chair is to sit in. But then you look at, there can also be the form of the chair. And this is when art really comes in. Back out of this. So I used to work at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. We had a whole floor of chairs created by different famous designers. You can see all these funky different chairs here. And I'll let you guys look on your own. And these are all in the archives of the MoMA, the actual chairs. They go for, like this is an Eames chair. A lot of times they still make these. You might find one for, I don't know, $5,000, $10,000. You might find a knockoff one for $400 to $800. They also sold miniature versions of these in the design store. People collected them, and they were like architects and designers, and they would put them in like their cabinets and things like that. If you want to go to the MoMA website, it's moma.org, and you can learn all about the different chairs, and you can see who created it, the materials that were used, and the influence it had on history. All right, back to our PowerPoint. So every time you get dressed in the morning, you're making an artistic statement. Several of you decided to talk about that in your discussion question, which I was really impressed. Sometimes I just want function. I'm in California right now. We're having a heat wave this weekend, and it's 109 degrees here, and there's no air conditioning because it's only hot 2 to 3 weeks out of the year, so people don't install air conditioning. So we have the doors open, air's flowing through, and of course I'm sweating to death. So I have on a tank top, I have on some shorts. This is just for function, to stay cool. But if I was to come to class and be in front of you all and maybe go to a job interview or something, I would dress for form. I would want someone to see my artistic personality and show, that I'm not very reserved, that I'm very outgoing and I'm flamboyant and lots of fun and high energy, lots of color, or really snazzy accessories. And that's a way of artistic expression. There's lots of ways you can do that. So Michael Jordan, his number was the 23. And he was also, the 23rd shoe came out called the Jordan. And he and Tinker Hatfield, who's the famous designer who does all of his shoes, they went to Europe to find designs for this shoe because it was a very, very important shoe and it was going to be known forever. So there's a video down here at the bottom. You can see right here. I want you to, it says you control click on it. I'm going to upload this PowerPoint to and make a note of that. I'm going to upload this PowerPoint to, actually, no, I'll just copy and paste this link into the bottom of the email that I send you all so you can watch it. But basically, the shoe is so cool because it comes out in different colors across the United States. So New York, New Jersey got, I'm trying to see it. The door's open. Hold on one second. So New York and New Jersey, Connecticut area, they got one color, let's say red. And then California, LA, San Diego got yellow, San Francisco got white, DC got a different color. So different colors are being distributed across the United States. Also, you can see right here, these different markings right here. Those are based on threads from, well, first of all, architecture that they found. The threads on men's suits that were custom made in Italy, when you took apart the seams and you could see their hand stitch, this design right here was the actual stitching that they saw. So they knew it was high end. They call it the finger that, I'm trying to get in front of the camera, this finger that wraps around the shoe, that's right here. That was inspired by Antonio Gaudi. Gaudi is a very famous architect in Spain, and he does lots of things that are fluid and organic and funky, and I'm going to show you that right now. So you could have just a building and it's functional, or you could go into more artistic realm of it as a form, and check this out. Images. So you can see these different designs here. They have, they look really organic, or they look like something like hallucinations, or they're very fluid. Has like an Art Nouveau look to it. Oh. You can see this doesn't look like a regular cathedral. It looks, look at all this, the different colors and the top. It's very surreal. And if you're interested in learning more about his work, you can Google his name. See this one. That's the inside, looking up in the cathedral and seeing all the different glass and all the different holes. Super cool. All right. So, So I'm going to want you to watch the video here on YouTube. It's about 8 or 9 minutes long, and there will be questions about it for a grade. All right, this is Andres Sereno. Andres Sereno created this really controversial piece of artwork called Piss Christ. And people were really offended by this. It was in the Sensations exhibit that was in Brooklyn. And the mayor at the time, Bloomberg, said he was going to pull all funding from the museum if they didn't take down this exhibit. Andres Sereno, in his culture, he thought that being in the body of Christ, he could not get closer to God than his body functions, because he was made in the likeness of Christ. So he took a clear acrylic box, he put an image of Jesus on the cross, and then he put his urine in the front of it and sealed it up. So he was saying he was Christ-like because he had the body that came from Adam and Jesus, which is very intimate. However, it was not perceived that same way. Other controversial pieces that were at the Sensations exhibit. Shark, that's Damien Hirst. The shark, he's put in formaldehyde. Okay, this used to be the cover of the textbook for the class. Okay, and this picture right here, this is called The Virgin Mary, and this is by Chris Olfini, and this was seen as very offensive. They think of Virgin Mary, they don't think of her as being this African-American or Black figure. This is almost demonstrated as a mammy type stereotype. And these little things around here are called putti, P-U-T-T-I. And in Italian Renaissance paintings, those are little cherubs or angels that float around in the background. But if you get closer and you look, these are actually the rear ends of women's bottoms out of pornographic magazines. And he's poking fun at this whole image. At the bottom down here, on the left, the bottom on the right, and this one up here, this one reads Virgin, and this reads Mary. And those are big, huge pieces of elephant dung. Yes, stuff that comes out of an elephant dung. So this was, he was disgracing the image of Mary, and this just went through the roof. And obviously they were looking for a shock and awe factor, and they got it, and we're still talking about it 20, 30 years later. So is all art beautiful? No. Art can be shocking. It can be a reflection of our culture, which is at that time in the 80s and the 90s, the whole AIDS epidemic was going on. We have pornography everywhere. We're getting porn channels. We're having pornography. Everybody that wants to become famous is posed for Playboy. So he was poking fun at that whole thing. That was in his culture, visual culture. Oh, and going back to the Michael Jordan shoe, Michael Jordan said he was laying in bed with his two sons and he was watching the MTV Music Awards, and he saw Boys to Men come out to accept an award, and they were in black tuxedos, and they were all wearing this Michael Jordan 23. And that moment, that's when he realized that he was no longer just an athlete, but he was a fashion designer and an icon. That's when he knew he had arrived. Then we have Marcel Duchamp. Marcel Duchamp, he was a member of a group of avant-garde, which means unique or different than the norm. He was an avant-garde artist, and the Armory show is coming up, and that is the most famous show. It's in New York City every year. And once you get in the Armory, basically you get to be known, your name gets out, and you become one of these famous artists like Georgia O'Keeffe, that kind of thing. So he and his friends did not get into the Armory show, and they were poking fun of how these people were so aristocratic and so tight-laced. And so he took, if you can recognize what this is, he was poking fun at them. So he took a urinal from a men's restroom. He signed it R. Mutt, 1917, just as a fake name. And he entered it into the show, and it was accepted. And he called it Fountain. And so forever, Marcel Duchamp has become famous for his ready-mades. A ready-made is something where you take different objects and you combine them together to create a new piece of art. So what does that look like? So here, Duchamp is here with you could see the stool and the bicycle wheel, and that's a new piece of art. He's taken this right here, which is an old glass holder, and turned it into a piece of art. He's taken spikes and put them on old ironing. He has all kinds of different things. Umbrella, just the bone structure of that right there on a stool. Is that art? He's taken something that already exists and he's putting it together and making art. Some say no, some people say yes. Well, what about a car, exotic car? Is that art? Well, someone took a motor and someone took a tire and they put all that together to create a new piece of art. Something to think about. All right, and this leads us to the Guerrilla Girls. The Guerrilla Girls were a group of women who were artists who were being misrepresented in museums. So what they did is they wore gorilla masks, and you have no idea who they are, and they took on the pseudonyms or names of deceased famous women artists. So one was named Frida Kahlo, one was named Georgia O'Keeffe, one was named Judy Chicago, Frida Kahlo. Okay, so anyway, they put these posters all over town and on billboards. This one says, "The advantages of being a woman artist. Working without the pressure of success. Not having to be in shows with men. Know your career might pick up after you're 80. Whatever art you make will be labeled as feminist." It's blurry. Not having to be embarrassed by being called a genius. So they were bringing to light the fact that most of the artwork in museums were done by men, and little to none were by females. If you'd like to learn more about the Guerrilla Girls, I'm very passionate about their work. There's thegorillagirls.com. This was a billboard that was all over New York and LA. It says, "Do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum?" Less than 5% of the artists in modern art sections are women. less than, but 85% of the nudes are female. This is actually a famous painting called Odalisque. And odalisque is an image of a woman prostitute who is just to stay there all day long and be basically a slave in a harem so that the men could come and have sex with her whenever. And they put the girl, excuse me, the gorilla mask on her head. And if you actually study the painting in art history, you'll learn that this is not the natural form or back of a person. It's elongated to make this sensual look of the curve, but a body's back can't make that shape. There'd be a bigger bend in it. So there's lots of discussion about just the original painting itself. And then, of course, the nude and why she's being looked at and she's being used, basically. And that's how women were treated throughout history. So then we get to Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol was a pop artist. What did he know? He was also he was a gay gentleman who had a place called the Factory. It was a studio, and he had people coming in and out all the time. This is during the age of manufacturing, so we've got factories happening and smokestacks, and everybody is starting to create. And we have the wars, and you can send any child into a grocery store today, and they would be able to pick up. If you said to pick up a can of chicken noodle soup, a 5-year-old could walk into the grocery store and pick it out. Why? Because the label is so recognizable. So is this just a product or is this art? Well, if you actually look closer, you can see that each one of these cans is different. This one says beef. This says vegetable beef. This is chicken. This is onion. So each one has its own individual twist on the original. And he was saying that everything we see, everything that's around us is actually art. Someone had to design it, someone had to create it. Whether it is the puzzle box cover or the design for the front of the pen, there was a designer involved, and there is an artistic component of that. Everything is art, and it's a reflection of our culture. Test question. What is art? A reflection of our culture. This is Andy Goldsworthy. Andy Goldsworthy grew up as a Boy Scout. He became an Eagle Scout, and he was obsessed with nature. So his environment, he spent most of his free time in the woods, a lot of time in the woods. So he took elements, things he found in nature, and created artwork. These are different leaves that he has put together in a gradient color pattern, and he lays them there. He doesn't use any glue or any nails. And then what happens is when the wind comes and it takes it away, it's over. So he photographs it and then it's gone. It's not permanent, it's impermanent. So I'm going to show you some more of Andy Goldsworthy, which is really cool. These are all made in nature. I'm going to show you, there's 2 or 3 here I want to show you. The first one is the Here's a good one. He used different stones to create this egg shape, but he didn't carve any of them down. So he used them in their natural form to find out where they'd fit perfectly. Also, I want to show you this ice bridge. Here it is over here. So this is an ice bridge, and how do you do that? How do you create all this to make it stand up? It's pretty easy, actually. So what you would do is you would take this area right here, and you would lay logs down on top of each other, and like 3 on the bottom, 2 on the top, 1 on one, and you start from the outside, and you lay the ice sheets here, ice sheets, all the way up until it's really, really tight. And then the first thing you do is you pull out that top log, and it's still holding really tight. And if you have to add another one in to make it tight so it doesn't fall, but you want that pressure to be super tight, and then you just pull them out. And so now you have this structure formed. So I did this one. Same thing. putting the logs in, creating the circle, and pulling the logs out. Of course, it'll melt and it'll all go away. Very neat. So if you're interested in him, you can Google more of his information. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about the elements of design. All right, this is very important. This is going to basically outline for us the rest of what we're going to be doing in the semester. So the elements of design. First, there's line. Line can be considered in two ways. Looks like there's a halo behind me, like I'm in the sky. Isn't that cool? Oh, that's art from the window up there. Anyway, so line can be considered in two ways. First, it's a mark made with a pen. So if I take my pen and just make a mark on paper, that's considered a line. Or a brush, a pen or brush, or the edge created when two shapes meet, then there's a line right there in between them. Okay? Now, there are different types of lines. You can have rough lines, you can have smooth lines, you can have an implied line. Like I could be pointing right here. Let me back up so you can see my camera. Or I'll do it like this. I don't have a line that's actually going from my finger to this blob, but you can imply that that's where I'm pointing. Okay, so that's an implied line. A shape is a self-contained area of geometric or organic form. Okay, let me get a piece of paper. All right, I'm back. So, a geometric shape basically has straight lines. So you might remember from geometry, you have, I'll do it up here. So can you guys see me? You can't see that. You see this? Triangle, square, polygon, hexagon. Okay, these are geometric shapes. Okay, they are mathematically created. They are not found in nature. All right, organic shapes are things found naturally in nature. Organic shapes would be basically blob type structures, things that look like beans, water, maybe lakes. Can you see that? Just soft edges. That's organic. So a positive shape automatically creates a negative shape. So if I take this, let me do it like this, sorry. So this dot is my positive shape. All right. Well, guess what? Now I have all this white space around it. That's now the negative shape. So that's a shape. All of it minus the positive shape. Everybody understand? Okay. Now, lines have direction. Direction is important. You have horizontal lines. So think about looking out at the horizon that goes straight across. Okay, you see that? Horizontal lines suggest things that are calm. Think about looking out at the ocean. You've got the straight line where the ocean meets the sky. That's very calming. So when you start doing design in a room or a piece of artwork and you want to convey a sense of stillness, calm, meditation, you would want to have lines that were horizontal or images that portray that. If you want to have a feeling of balance, formality, or alertness, think about a soldier standing straight up and down, or a column at the Capitol building that suggests order, okay? And then you have oblique lines, and that suggests movement and action. That'll be something going, let me see if you can see me. So if I have a line that's going straight up from here to here, that's suggesting something is taking off. Where is it? Something is taking off down here and it's going straight up. That's an oblique line. Or you could call it diagonal. Okay, size is simply the relationship to an area occupied by one shape of another. So if I have my circle again, and then I have this big circle, the size of this shape is small compared to this shape, okay? However, the size of this shape is small compared to the size of this room. So shape has to do with the relationship of one object with another. And there's a play on that. Some artists actually do eye trickeries as a play on shape. And that one would be Rene Magritte. And I will show you him right now. Good example. My favorite artist actually dressed up as him for Halloween one year, about 15, 20 years ago. Let's see here. Room. Okay. So we're looking at this image here. Is this a really small room that has a really large comb and a small bed? Or is this a huge outdoor space with just a ceiling floating and a small comb, and are they in a small box? It plays with your eyes. It's a trick. Okay. So is the match really as big as a bed? No, not in real life. So it's trying to fool you. It's a trickery. We'll get into more of that later on. All right, texture. Texture is the surface quality of a shape, which is rough, smooth, soft, hard, glossy, etc. It can be tactile, like something I can touch. For example, this wall is bumpy. A good example is the bottom of your shoe has texture. It can be smooth like your skin, or it can be visual texture, something that you see, like the background here in this PowerPoint. It looks like grass cloth, but it's not really grass cloth, and you really can't feel it, but it looks like it has the bumps in it. So that would be visual texture. Color is another name for hue. For example, if I want to say midnight black or Chinese white or apple red, those are hues. That's the name of a color. Value has to do with the lightness or the darkness of a color. So think about a shade. If you want shade, you go stand under a tree and then you cast a shadow down, right? So it's darker under there. So if you add black to any color a little bit at a time, you're getting shades of that color. So if I take red and then I add a little bit of black and a little bit of black and a little more and a little more and a little more, I might get to burgundy. Okay. Now, if I want it to be lighter, which is known as a tint, T-I-N-T, I would add white. So I add a little bit of white, a little bit more, a little bit more. I might get to, as I add more red, it starts getting pink, which is still a red. So I could go from apple red to apple red to fire engine red to red petunias to magenta to baby pink. Okay, so that would be a lot of white in that. So that's a tint of red. Dark is a shade of red. We're adding black or adding white to get those colors. And that's on a value scale. And we're going to be creating lots of these things this weekend and over the next week. So I'm going to show you guys how we're going to do that in the next video. Value is also called tone. If you've heard the word Pantone, the Pantone color of the year, or if you do anything by computer,